New Zealand just hit a milestone no country wants to celebrate: lowest GDP growth in the developed world, hospitals turning away patients in record numbers, and young professionals fleeing at rates not seen since the Great Depression. If you've ever scrolled through travel content and thought, maybe I should move to New Zealand, stunning landscapes, work-life balance, friendly people, you need to see what's actually happening behind those Instagram-perfect mountain ranges. Today, we're counting down the 7 reasons New Zealand is going broke. And economists aren't just worried about this tiny island nation, they're calling it the canary in the coal mine for every Western economy that got comfortable and stopped innovating. By the end of this video, you'll understand why paradise has a price tag that even paradise can't afford. Let's start with the exodus nobody saw coming. 73,000 New Zealanders left the country in 2023 alone. That's not a trickle of backpackers or retirees. That's the entire population of a mid-sized city, vanishing in 12 months. Meet Sarah Chin. She's 34, an electrical engineer in Auckland, making $85,000 a year. Sounds decent, right? Except she was living in a 1-bedroom apartment that cost $2,200 a month, and she couldn't save enough for a house deposit even after 8 years of working. In February 2024, Sarah moved to Brisbane. Same engineering job. 30% higher salary. 8 months later, she bought a 3-bedroom house in a suburb with actual trees and parks. She told me, and I'm paraphrasing here, I loved New Zealand, but I couldn't build a life there. I was working to survive, not to live. Here's the gut punch. New Zealand is losing more citizens per capita than any other OECD nation right now. Yes, even more than Greece lost during its debt crisis. These aren't random people. These are nurses, engineers, teachers, software developers, the exact people you need to rebuild an economy. A Treasury New Zealand report from March 2024 calculated that this net migration loss of skilled workers cost the economy $3.2 billion in lost productivity. That's not theoretical. That's hospital wings that won't get built. Startups that won't get funded. Innovations that will never happen. When your young, educated workforce is sprinting for the exits, something is deeply, fundamentally broken. But the brain drain is just the symptom. The real disease goes much deeper. Let's talk about what's actually pushing them out. The median house price in Auckland is $1.1 million. The median household income? $107,000. Do the math. You'd need to save every single dollar you earn, no food, no rent, no life, for 10 years straight just to afford a down payment. James and Emma Robertson are both teachers in Wellington. Combined income, $140,000. Solid middle-class professionals, right? The kind of people who should be able to rent a decent place for their family. In 2023, they applied for 47 rental properties. 47. They were rejected every single time, outbid by couples without kids, or investors offering 6 months rent up front. Today, James, Emma, and their 2 kids live in a garage conversion. They pay $2,400 a month for a space with black mold climbing the walls and a bathroom they share with the landlord's main property tenants. Emma told me her daughter asked, "Mommy, why do we live in a garage?" She didn't have an answer that wouldn't break her own heart. A Reserve Bank of New Zealand study from September 2024 found that housing now consumes 47% of the average household income. That's the highest rate in the entire OECD, higher than Canada, higher than Australia, higher than anywhere else in the developed world. While Instagram influencers are posting million-dollar views of Queenstown and Milford Sound, real Kiwis are living 3 families to a house, sleeping in cars, choosing between heating and eating. The government finally launched Kiwi Build 2.0, a promise to build 100,000 affordable homes by 2027. But critics say it's 5 years too late, underfunded, and moving at the speed of bureaucracy while families are homeless right now. And just when you think it can't get worse, the healthcare system is collapsing in real time. Emergency room wait times, 14 hours on average. Cancer treatment delays, 6 to 9 months. And they just announced 1,500 nurse positions will be cut due to budget shortfalls. Let me introduce you to David Morrison. He's 67, lives in Christchurch. On a Tuesday night in November 2024, David felt chest pains. Not crushing, just uncomfortable. Concerning. He drove himself to the ER at 7 p.m. He checked in. Sat down. Waited. At 11 p.m., the pains got worse. He told the desk nurse. She said, "We see you, Mr. Morrison. There are critical cases ahead of you." At 4 a.m., David had a mild heart attack. In the waiting room. Surrounded by 30 other people also waiting. They rushed him in, finally, but the damage was done. David survived, but he now has permanent heart damage that could have been completely prevented with early intervention. Health New Zealand released data in August 2024 showing that 47% of patients waited longer than the 6-hour target in emergency departments. The surgical waitlist grew by 23,000 people in just 1 year. Here's the cruel irony. This is the same healthcare system that was ranked number 2 globally in the early 2000s. The system that other countries studied and tried to copy. Now, wealthy New Zealanders are flying to Thailand for hip replacements because it's faster than waiting at home. Let me say that again. People are traveling 9,000 kilometers to a developing nation because their own healthcare system has failed them. If your parent had chest pains right now in Auckland, there's a real chance they'd still be sitting in a waiting room at sunrise. Let that sink in. But here's what really triggered the collapse. A hidden economic time bomb that finally exploded. 70% of New Zealand's exports are agricultural. And global dairy prices just dropped 34% in 18 months. Imagine your entire paycheck coming from one client. Now imagine that client cuts your pay by a third. That's New Zealand's economy right now. Tom Mackenzie runs a dairy farm in Waikato. It's been in his family since 1947, 3 generations of Mackenzies milking cows on the same land. Tom's grandfather survived droughts, economic crashes, and global wars. But Tom might be the one who loses it all. Milk prices crashed in late 2023. Tom is now selling his product at a loss. Every liter costs more to produce than he earns from it. He's $340,000 in debt. The bank is circling. He's considering selling to a corporate megafarm, one of those massive operations owned by foreign investors who see New Zealand land as just another asset on a spreadsheet. The Ministry for Primary Industries released a report in January 2025 showing that dairy export revenue fell from $20.8 billion in 2022 to $13.7 billion in 2024. That's a 34% collapse in the country's most important industry. But China, their biggest buyer, started producing its own dairy. New Zealand bet everything, their entire economic strategy, their national identity, their future, on one market. And that market just moved on. Economists have been screaming for a decade, diversify, invest in tech, build new industries. But New Zealand kept milking cows, literally and figuratively. Tech exports currently make up only 2% of New Zealand's GDP. In Ireland, a country with a similar population, tech exports are 46% of GDP. Ireland invested in education, infrastructure, tax incentives for tech companies. New Zealand invested in more dairy farms. Tom told me something that still haunts me. He said, "My grandfather survived the Great Depression on this land. But I don't think I can survive progress." And while farms collapse and families lose their generational wealth, the government made a decision that shocked economists worldwide. Government debt tripled in 5 years, from 19% of GDP to 58%. And here's the kicker. Most of it went to programs that didn't work. $1.9 billion was spent on a mental health transformation initiative between 2019 and 2024. The goal was to revolutionize mental health care, reduce suicide rates, cut wait times for therapy. The results? Suicide rates, unchanged. Wait times for therapy, increased by 40%. $1,900 million, and things got worse. The Auditor General released a damning report in November 2024. It found that 67% of COVID response contracts showed insufficient value for money. $4.2 billion in questionable spending, contracts awarded to consultants with no competitive bidding, projects with no measurable outcomes, Money that just vanished into the bureaucracy. Want to know my favorite example of insanity? They built a $300 million cycle bridge in Auckland. It was supposed to encourage cycling, reduce traffic, save the planet. It's used by 37 cyclists per day on average. 37. That's $8.1 million per regular cyclist. Meet Lisa Tanaka. She owns a small printing business in Hamilton. In 2024, her taxes went up. She paid $47,000 more than the year before. That's money pulled directly from her business, money she could have used to hire another employee or upgrade equipment. Meanwhile, her local library closed due to budget cuts. The potholes on her street doubled. Police response time for non-emergency calls jumped to over 2 hours. Every dollar they wasted was earned by someone like Lisa, working 60-hour weeks, paying her taxes on time, believing that money would build a better country for her kids. Instead, it built a cycle bridge that nobody uses and funded consultants who delivered PowerPoint presentations instead of solutions. When citizens work harder and get less, when they pay more and receive worse services, that's not just bad policy. That's a broken social contract. But there's one factor even more dangerous, one that economists whisper about but politicians won't touch. New Zealand workers put in long hours, but they produce 30% less per hour than Australians and 40% less than Americans. Kiwi businesses are stuck in the 1990s. Internet speeds rank 47th globally. Business broadband costs 3 times what it does in Singapore. Mobile data is slower than in Poland. The OECD productivity database from 2024 shows New Zealand ranking 25th out of 31 developed nations in labor productivity. And they're falling, not climbing. They have airports with public Wi-Fi slower than McDonald's. Highways that haven't been upgraded since 1982. It takes 4 days for freight to cross the country, the same time it takes to ship cargo to Sydney. Priya Sharma is a tech founder. She built an AI software company in Auckland, machine learning solutions for healthcare providers. Smart, innovative, exactly the kind of business New Zealand should be nurturing. But her internet kept crashing during investor calls. File uploads that should take minutes took hours. She lost 2 major contracts because clients thought she was unprofessional, when really, her country's infrastructure was sabotaging her. In October 2024, Priya moved her entire company to Singapore. She now employs 40 people, software engineers, designers, salespeople. Not one of them is in New Zealand. The government launched a Digital Boost program to upskill 100,000 workers in tech and digital literacy. Sounds great, right? Except the funding is 1/20th of what Ireland invested for a similar population. You can't upskill workers without infrastructure. You can't compete globally when your internet speed is slower than the global average. You can't build a modern economy on dial-up thinking. And the final reason might be the most controversial, because it challenges everything New Zealand prides itself on. New Zealand is 2,000 kilometers from the nearest major economy. Shipping a container to Europe costs 2.3 times what it costs from China. Geography isn't destiny, but it's expensive. Every product costs more. Every machine part arrives later. Every specialist consultant charges a premium for travel time. Companies can't just-in-time anything because just-in-time means for weeks if the ship doesn't get delayed. The World Bank Logistics Performance Index from 2024 ranks New Zealand 34th in trade logistics, below Estonia, below Portugal, below countries that barely show up on maps. Being isolated used to mean peaceful, safe, untouched by the chaos of the world. Now it means left behind while the world moves at internet speed. Hannah Lee is a biotech researcher at the University of Dunedin. She ordered specialized lab equipment from Germany for a cancer research project. It took 4 months to arrive, held up in customs, delayed by shipping, lost in the logistics nightmare that is getting anything to New Zealand. By the time the equipment arrived, her research grant had expired. She'd missed the window. She couldn't publish. Her competitor in Melbourne ordered the same equipment. It arrived in 3 weeks. They published first. Hannah's research, 2 years of work, became irrelevant overnight. Even paradise has a price tag. And New Zealand is learning that being beautiful doesn't pay the bills. If you've ever felt like your talent is trapped by circumstances you can't control, you understand what 5 million Kiwis are feeling right now. They're watching the world speed ahead while they're stuck waiting for the ship to arrive. But here's what gives me hope. New Zealand has reinvented itself before. In 1984, they were on the brink of total collapse. Massive debt, failing industries, brain drain, political chaos. Within 5 years, they transformed into one of the most business-friendly, economically competitive countries in the world. They deregulated, they innovated, they made painful but necessary choices. And it worked. Right now, there are green shoots. Tech exports are up 47% in Q4 2024, small, but growing fast. The film industry is bringing in $2.1 billion annually. Weta Digital is creating visual effects for the biggest movies on the planet. Avatar sequels are filming there, creating jobs and global attention. And geothermal energy is making New Zealand 85% renewable. They could become a green energy exporter, selling clean power technology, sustainable solutions, environmental expertise to the world. They're at a crossroads. They can double down on dairy and tourism and hope the world comes back. Or they can bet on innovation, technology, renewable energy, and the kind of future-facing industries that can't be outsourced or undercut. The infrastructure is fixable. The brain drain is reversible if opportunities return. The housing crisis has solutions if there's political will. But the window is closing. Every month, another 6,000 skilled workers leave. Every quarter, another business moves offshore. Every year, the gap between where they are and where they need to be grows wider. Here's what I want to know. If you were a 25-year-old New Zealander right now, with skills, ambition, and dreams, would you stay and fight to rebuild your country, or leave for better opportunities abroad? Before we continue, please hit the subscribe button to ensure that you never miss out on any of my videos. Like and drop your comments below, and I will welcome you to our community. With that said, let's continue. Drop your answer in the comments. Because this isn't just about New Zealand. This is the same impossible choice young people in Canada, the UK, Portugal, and a dozen other countries are facing right now. Stay in the place you love but can't afford? Or chase the money and lose your home? And if you're from Australia, tell us honestly, would you hire a Kiwi engineer who's willing to work harder for less? Because the brain drain is your brain gain. Let's see if we can get more comments than the number of Kiwis who left last year. That's 73,000 comments. Hit that like button if you think they can still turn this around, or if you think this is a warning every Western country needs to see. Because if paradise can go broke, what does that say about the rest of us?